Welcome to Deep Look, Multiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Multiworld senior editor Keith Rayner, on this Tuesday, August 1st. AUDL, first round of the playoffs, all wrapped up, Keith. And I gotta say, it did not go how basically anybody expected it.
Where's the chalk? Where's my usual AUDL chalk? Where who took it away? Bring it back, please.
The rain washed it away. The wind blew it away. Indy gets a 23-15 win over Chicago at home. DC dominates Boston 19-12. And then another home win for Austin, who beats Carolina 19-18 in what has to be seen as at least a little bit of an upset. But the biggest story of the weekend for sure, Los Angeles upsetting Colorado 22-21 in Denver. And they were 4-point underdogs in the Keith Rayner set spread, and they win by 1. So quite the weekend for LA as they advance to face Salt Lake in the West Final. Keith, I think we should start on this last game. It was an ugly, grindy, sloppy game, a lot of turnovers, and you just got to give the LA defense a ton of credit for how much problems that it gave Colorado. And they were able to do just enough to take the win, even though Colorado did have the disc late with a chance to tie it up.
This game was definitely close. It was a very scrappy game. Some big plays had to be made, but LA was able to get the better in what was basically the worst we saw Colorado play the entire year. And credit to LA for putting them in that position. I think you're right that the LA defense deserves a lot of credit for making Colorado look like that. John Nethercutt's absence probably also deserves some credit. But LA comes out and wins in the clutch and an ignominious end to what looked like such an auspicious season for Colorado.
Yeah, I know. Coming off last year, you think that they are just poised to have a big season. And I don't think they ever played to the level that they were capable of. And really, frankly, what we saw from them last year at any point this season. And certainly, it's tough for it to come to end that way. And it's really tough to have a team missing one of, arguably its best player for the playoff game. And that was kind of a story for both of the sort of the favorites that lost, is that they were missing key pieces. But you got to give credit to the Aviators and to the Soul for playing up and maybe playing their best game when it counted the most.
Definitely. And doing it on the road, like, that's pretty wild. I was really shocked. It was concerning though, because LA, even while it wasn't like we mentioned, not necessarily a pretty game, it never really felt fluky. It never felt like they were out ahead of a Colorado team that, they were catching some lucky breaks and Colorado was really playing the better game. Sometimes you feel that way watching a team. You're like, well, I feel like this team's playing a better game, but somehow they're down 1 or 2. It didn't feel like that. It felt like LA was in the position that they deserved to be in. And, we saw Lucas Ambrose come up with some absolute awesome clutch plays.
Yeah. I mean, and just the whole LA D line, like, you look at the, Ambrose and Brunker and Steiner and Tien, they all go out there and have minimal turnovers. I think of the names I just said, Tien had 1 turnover. Nobody else had a turnover. They're putting scores on the board. They're getting blocks. Ambrose didn't actually end up getting a block in the game, but he was a monster for the D line. And when your depth D line pieces are having a good game, that's going to be a huge part of success. And some tough games for key guys for Colorado. Alex Atkins had 4 turns. Matty Jackson played pretty good, but it was clear that they missed that rock centerpiece in Nethercutt, and they could never really get comfortable. Their defense was solid, but it just wasn't enough from their to get the win. And you know what? What a run for the Aviators, who are not even supposed to be here in the playoffs at all.
Really, I was. You're right. They were on the brink of extinction before, and I was very skeptical. I mean, I was really fading them coming into this postseason. I felt like they had maybe the least chance of any first round team to get a dub. And they certainly flipped that on its head. I mean, this is why they play the games. Alex Atkins through like the rest of the season had like, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 turns or something. So to have 4 in their most important game is pretty tough, especially when they're missing Nethercutt. They're trying to integrate Stoughton and Landisman. And meanwhile, on the other end, you got Kevin Tien, who kind of came out of nowhere. What is it, like his 5th game with the team or something? And was one of their best players. You got Lucas Ambrose throwing greatest back into the middle of the field and then sprinting down the field to go catch a sky for the score. The guys on Swing Pass who, so much credit to them for putting out a podcast that like really talks so passionately about the AUDL. If you're a fan, you definitely should be listening. They were saying the throw that Ambrose saved for the greatest is like one of the worst throws in like league history. One of the worst throws of the year. Just horrendously bad throw. But Ambrose goes up and throws it back into the middle of the field and then takes off for a goal. I don't even know how often you see that someone throws the greatest and then eventually catches the goal too. Pretty wild stuff.
Well, quite the win. And I guess, Keith, we don't need to get too deep into the upcoming round today because we'll have a chance to talk about it in 2 weeks. But do they have a chance against Salt Lake?
I feel like I can't write them off because of what we just saw, but Colorado did not play well. And Salt Lake has had basically like the most efficient offense in the league this year. There's a chance. I'm not going to totally rule it out, but I still think they're going to be big underdogs. I think that's not beyond the pale, given what we've seen from Salt Lake from them this season. But maybe if we find out Salt Lake is going to be missing one of their most important players too, then that might change the math here. Pavel must be just living it up. I mean, he must be in the Summit group chat, just letting everybody have it, right?
Gotta be. And he played great down the stretch in particular to close that game out because there were a lot of pressure 0 points late for LA. And, Colorado did get the turn. They got a turn with I don't know how much time was left, maybe 2 minutes. They immediately called timeout. And then the O-line comes in and coughs it up. That should have let the D-line play.
Oh. I'm sure that's what the D-line's thinking. Although that's every D-line in the AUDL from my experience. Every time they get subbed out from the timeout, they're like, UMFers better score or else we're going to be fuming.
Well, it certainly an interesting game, exciting game, great crowd as we've seen in Colorado, and it's tough way to go out, but Aviators against the odds moving on to the next round. Let's talk Austin. They play a somewhat shorthanded Carolina team, although Joe White returns to the lineup and had a big impact, both good and bad, for Carolina. And it just seemed like the Flyers couldn't make the plays when they needed to, and Austin did. And particularly Evan Swiatek and Kyle Henke were fantastic. And, you talk about Henke's huge goal to close out the third quarter, the giant layout, to keep the 1 goal advantage that they'd built in the first half. That ultimately ended up being enough for them to take the win. And this Austin team, Keith, as much as I have doubted them this season, and it is true that this is their first win against a playoff team, they hadn't beaten anybody. They hadn't really come close to beating anybody good.
Their 9 wins came over 0 teams.
The league's worst teams. The league's worst teams. But last year, this Austin team looked pretty darn good for much of the season. And you know what? It goes to show you that you cannot just send a thin-ish roster on the road and expect to win in the AUDL. And credit to Austin for coming out. The crowd was huge and into the game. And you know what? I don't give them much of a chance against Atlanta, but an awesome win and a terrible end of the season for Carolina, who really just never brought it this season at any point.
That's kind of things kind of came full circle, I feel like, for Carolina. Do you remember back in the beginning of the year, they were looking really rocky and the personnel choices were like really weird. They're just like throwing D-line guys out there on O, and some people weren't with the team yet and stuff like that. And there's kind of this, well, they've been here before, like they'll bring it together by the end. They just never did. And even they went down swinging with an incomplete roster still. The O-line really looked like they missed Gooch and AD in particular. So it is a full circle ending for a Raleigh team our Carolina team, excuse me, that just, I don't know if there was a lack of buy-in, if they were struggling with injuries or what, but they were not on the same page throughout the season. And you could see some of the talent on display when things came together, but there just was not a chance to do that consistently. And that's like the opposite of Austin, who I think is one of the teams that's the best at bringing together consistency for their personnel and getting to know each other. They have great chemistry. And then, it helps to have Kyle Henke, who's just so good in the clutch, just such a clutch playmaker in general. He just has that. When he's playing at his best, like sometimes if you're like, is that Jack Williams? Like you're squinting and you're like, is that Jack Williams coming up in the clutch right now? No, it's Kyle Henke. Like he has that power. So he took over when they needed him.
Got to check out Matthew
Not
Brooks'
a lot of turnovers in this game, like not super ugly, but the turnovers that happened often felt like really brutal.
Oh yeah, I mean there was a Joe White turnover late in the game that I was just like, oh my god, like what are you thinking on this one? And I don't know if you didn't hear me, Keith, but got to check out Matthew Brooks' picture over on Twitter of the Henke layout. Incredible picture, one of the best AUDL pictures I've seen this season. Yeah, I mean, awesome win for Austin. Do they have a chance, Keith, against the Hustle?
They for sure do. I mean, they're a talented team playing their best ultimate at the right time. They'll be on the road this time, which I think will be a little tougher. And but I think that they are the most talented team that was an underdog in this round. And so, yeah, I think the South Division always felt like it was going to be hotly contested. I think Atlanta's really good, so I still think they'll be the favorites. But yeah, Austin's a for real chance, and I think you're probably once we sit down and finalize the line, I think you're going to see it reflect that. I don't. Maybe Atlanta minus 3.5 is as wide as it's going to get, given that they have the win over them prior. But
Hustle won 21-17 in Atlanta earlier this year. The story of that game was that it was actually close for 3 of the quarters, but Atlanta outscored Austin 7-3 in the first and basically just held the lead the rest of the way. Henke played. He didn't have a great game. He had 3 turnovers. Swiatek was solid. He had 1 turnover. So, I think if Austin gets out to a better start, which I imagine they will, they certainly have a chance. I feel like if the spread is 3.5 or 4.5 for Atlanta, you have to take Austin, right? But on the other hand, I think Atlanta's going to win that game. We could talk more about it in a couple weeks.
Yeah, maybe we'll end up at like minus 2.5 with some juice on one side.
We'll see. Any thoughts on DC over Boston and Indy over Chicago, Keith?
0 for 14 on break chances for Boston. It's pretty much all you need to know. That tells you the whole story. Chicago, that was pathetic. I'm sorry, that was pathetic. 3 blocks, 21 turnovers indoors.
They were not indoors.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Okay, that makes me feel better. You still 3 blocks to 11, 21 turns to 12. That's embarrassing.
They did not play well. The bottom of their roster, like some of their depth guys, just had a terrible game, and I feel like that's something that can happen when you go on the road. And they just really never were in the mix. And And you know what? Credit to Xavier Payne, who I thought had a really nice game. 6 assists, just 1 turn on 40 throws. Really solid. And how many breaks did Chicago end up having there, Keith?
3 breaks.
Yeah. I mean, I think that goes to show you how solid the Indy offense was. And hey, I think the Alley Cats maybe have the best chance of any of the teams to get an upset and go to championship weekend in the next round.
I'm really undecided. I've been on the show. I've publicly come out for the Alley Cats this year, but yeah, I feel like they're in a pretty coin flippy situation with Minnesota.
Their games against the Wind Chill this year, they lost 23-21 in Indy. They lost 22-17 in Minnesota, and that's what it's been. So they're never going to be underdogs, but they got a chance. All right, well, that wraps up the AUDL stuff. Home teams win 3 of the games. LA wins on the road. See what happens in round 2 coming up, not this weekend, but the following. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we are going to break down SFI East and then get you ready for the really, truly first big club tournament of the season, the U.S. Open. We got some international teams coming in. We got the best of the best in the U.S., top finishers from last year's Nationals, and the mega event with YCC alongside. It's going down in Denver, Colorado this year. We'll talk about it next. Welcome back to Deep Look. SFI East took place in Columbus, Ohio this past weekend. It was kind of a weird one. They had a lot of rain, so games were delayed on day 1 because there was standing water on the fields. I know there were some issues because of those same storms with people getting in on flights and whatnot. And Keith, we had anything. You want to talk about the AUDL playoffs not being chalky. I mean, this club season has been crazy so far, and that continued at SFI East, where none of the favorites won. And we had Phoenix in the men's division beat GOAT in the semifinals. That's their first win against GOAT since 2005.
I was over here touting this Phoenix team as a low seed to watch, and I didn't go far enough, Charlie. I didn't go far enough. The finals in the men's division, the 13 seed beats the 10 seed. Delirium. Can any listeners tell me where Delirium is from, or name a player on the Delirium roster? Yeah, it's Select Fight East. It's not exactly like the marquee tournament of the season or anything, but disappointing performance for GOAT. They ran into the best team, which was Phoenix, and I love the Canadian stat. I can't wait to get Theo and Danny's take on Phoenix and GOAT.
Well, what's crazy is that GOAT was the better team for the rest of the weekend, and it wasn't even close. I mean, GOAT demolished Delirium earlier in the weekend, 13-5. And Phoenix beat Delirium 14-13. Now, sometimes a team has your number. Sometimes you have a bad game. Who knows? GOAT probably expecting to beat Phoenix, as they have for over 15 years, every single time. So a shocking outcome, but Phoenix goes undefeated with a lot of close wins.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to give him credit. I still think probably I would expect GOAT to be the better team later in the season, but hey, that's a huge win for the Ottawa Phoenix team.
Yeah. I mean, GOAT also demolished Lost Boys, who Phoenix beat on Universe. And Phoenix was like losing to Red Wolves in their opening game. That was the opening game of the season, but I remember watching that game. I like to tune into the streams. I like watching Ultimate, obviously. And I'm sitting here and I'm watching this Phoenix team that I've been barking about on the show. I hear losing to Red Wolves, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to take this L when I get back. But they turned it around in that one. And so they end up getting the win. Great work for them, and exciting start, and adding just more intrigue to a club season. That you're right. It feels like we haven't really gotten aloft yet. That we're still running on the tarmac. We haven't got wheels up all the way. We haven't left the ground completely. So we're gonna get takeoff this weekend.
at some point, like, first of all, the results count.
Oh, these super count.
Second of all, I don't know. Like, when are we supposed to start believing it, Keith? This weekend?
No, I mean, after regionals.
After regionals.
Honestly,
for some
quarters.
teams, that's probably true.
Quarters.
But you know what? It's pretty interesting. Like the bid picture right now, like what's going to happen there? You know, currently, I mean, some stuff's so crazy. Like Pony on frisbeerankings.com, which is of course cloning the USAU algorithm. Pony is not in the bid picture at the moment. Now, obviously, that's not going to sustain.
I thought the results matter, Charlie.
But it is true that is a thing right now. But, you know, you got a couple of Northeast teams outside looking in, Pony and Sprout. You know, the Southeast has 3 bids right now with Ring, Chain, and RDU in the mix. But hey, like, where is Delirium going to end up? They're currently sitting in 28th. They maybe just did too much damage to themselves earlier in the year. But by the way, Delirium is from Kennesaw. And they got a bunch of like names from Georgia, past Georgia teams.
Yeah.
They look pretty solid, Keith.
Yeah, no, I was just joshing. I mean, they do look, it is basically a Georgia, University of Georgia alum / current player team.
And we've seen teams like that make nationals. What was the name of that Colorado team that did it? Now I forget their name. 2 years ago.
Yeah, I suddenly forgot their name too. Well, you know the one.
The Oakland Haters back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it used to be a time-honored tradition to like at least show up to sectionals with your college team, but teams I don't think really do that anymore.
But yeah, I mean, you said it was, you know, the 13 and the 10 seed. How about the semis, right? We had the 1 seed and then the 10, 11, 13. The Lost Boys upsetting Blueprint in quarters. Another Southeast team, and they make it through to semis where they lose to Delirium 11-9.
The Southeast having 3 bids is like a very real possibility.
It definitely is. Definitely is. Over in the mixed division, the Cleveland Crocs were fantastic. And they knock off Red Flag, the 1 seed, 13-11 in the semis. They beat Flight Club 15-10 in the final. The only close game they had was that one against Red Flag. And, you know, I'm impressed by this Crocs team. I think you look at their PEC results from earlier and they have the losses to Shine and Space Force. But, you know, I think this is a legit team that could be a quarterfinalist at Nationals, Keith. I liked what I saw this weekend.
They have the goods right now. I mean, they were one of the teams that had like 30 practice players, right? Like, so, you know, maybe it's just a numbers thing. You know, they're just coming out en masse. But this is a great set of results for them. You know, they beat basically a bunch of the teams you'd say were some of the best teams here. I mean, they crushed Classy, they beat KCU handily, they obviously beat Red Flag, as you mentioned. So I don't think there's anything that feels fake about this. And you know, when you look around at the rest of the tournament, who are you excited by? I mean, remember when we were all hopped up on Ramp? They lost 3 games in a row in the tournament. KCU, they split with Ramp. They lost to Crocs. They lost to Moondog. Moondog, who's out here chirping about us, saying that they lost complaining that we talk trash about them if they went 1-5 at PEC. God, where's the results? They did lose to they lost to Red Flag, the highest ranked team at the tournament, our power rankings. They lost to Flight Club, a finalist. So still losing to top end teams, but at some point you got to get some wins, right? Except for mixtape. And what do we do with mixtape? So I don't know. The mixed division seems primed for chaos, basically.
Classic.
Over
in the women's division, Starling upsets Siege 14-12 in the final. Starling, the Western Massachusetts team, with one of my favorite logos in all of Club Ultimate. Maybe my number one. I really like it. Yeah, they go undefeated, mostly dominating everybody that they played up until semis. They had 13-10 win over Rival and then 14-12 over Siege in the final, coming back from down 0-3 in that game, by the way.
Yeah, I remember seeing that final and I was like, oh, well, this is where you see Starling turned into a regional level team, losing to a high regionals, low nationals team like Siege. They go down 3-0. I think they took the classic 3-0 timeout, but they turned it around from there. They were able to come back, and they made some big plays. There was this box out, half falling down, half layout catch that I think was a big turning point in the game for them. So yeah, Starling came out and they had to fight off Siege. I mean, Siege did not go away or roll over. They were still pushing really late in that game. I think it was clear both teams were also starting to feel the weight of playing a whole tournament, but they really impressed. This is what you want to see from a team that is thinking about potentially making nationals, is going out and beating these regional level teams that they played in most of the tournament handily. So a strong start for a Starling team that I swear when we were talking about this on the show last week that they were the 8th seed. And I was like, oh, this is the team that's seeded too low. Watch out for them. It got flipped and they ended up as the 3 seed. They beat Rogue, ended up losing in semifinals, the team that we both picked to reach the final and rival a decent showing. But yeah, this is obviously a great start for Starling.
Currently, Siege sitting at 12th in the USAU rankings, earning the second to last bid. 12th is misleading. It's more like 14th, I guess. There's a couple of teams that are not officially ranked because they haven't played 5 games yet. So, I mean, everything is very preliminary. This is all from frisbeerankings.com. Starling debuts at around 18th, but they have not lost. And you have to imagine that if they have another good tournament, that they could pop up and snag one of those last bids. Whether it's them or Siege, doesn't matter too much for the Northeast.
And I'm sure they'd really love to have an extra bid so that they can get in the mix with Siege and Iris and not have to deal with the heavyweights that populate the top end of the division. So these sorts of regular season wins are really meaningful.
All right, so let's turn our attention now to this coming weekend and the U.S. Open. We've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday club competition, and then Saturday, Sunday, Monday YCCs. This really, Keith, this is the first time since the pandemic that we have what I would call a traditional looking US Open. We have all 3 divisions. We have international teams. We have the top level teams, not just sort of like random scattered teams from the area. And so we're kind of having a back to normal club season for the first time since 2019. So, 3 divisions. Been some drops and things a little funky. There's 12 teams in men's. There's 12 teams in mixed. And did they get to 12 in women's? Yes. So all set on that front. I think I'm thinking of a different tournament with drops. So your top seeds in the men's division: Bravo, Truck Stop, Pony, and the Buzz Bullets coming over from Japan. And yes, Masahiro Matsuno is on the roster. In the mixed division, BFG, Mixtape, Dragon Thrust, and Exist are your top 4 seeds. And in the women's division, Molly Brown, Traffic, Flipside, and Brute Squad. So we kind of get the PEC West women's division back, plus Brute and Scandal. It's gonna be very fun. I think this could be a super exciting women's division in particular.
I think it's really easy to look forward to the women's division. I mean, you basically have everybody short of what Phoenix and Bent as your top end teams that you're thinking about. We get to see what Sixers has in store. Plus, I think that the international competition is going to be competitive. I think having teams like Mud and Swampy Barg will mean that those games could end up being competitive too. Those teams could break through a bit. How odd is it to see Fury Brute 4-5
crazy
full play matchup? That is an unusual sight. But we'll be happy to take it in.
Going to be a great game. We've also got a couple Japanese teams on the women's side: Swampy Barg and Mud. And I mean, Schwa is the 11 seed. It's going to be a really competitive tournament. And I think that's true across the board. I mean, that's the nice thing about the US Open. You really get to watch the best teams.
And we're I think far enough into the season that I think teams are going to be starting to dial it in. They're going to start to look to really build on the things that they're going to apply at nationals.
All right, Keith. So let's get some prognostication here. What's your favorite pool? Let's stay in the women's division for now. What's your favorite pool?
How are you going to get away from a brute fury pool play matchup and a mud team that I think is pretty respectable? I can see the case for Pool C. You get Sixers all the way at the bottom of the pool. That's a pretty strong team. Swampy Bark should be good. So I think Pool C is a perfectly good case. I think Pool C probably has the most the flattest graph of the potential outcomes. That's the one where I think you have the most options. But I think Pool D should create some pretty compelling ultimate, and I think that Brute Squad Fury matchup just holds a lot of weight. So I'm going to go with Pool D.
That's a great one. I'm trying to remember, where did Mud finish at WUCC? They went 8-3. They beat Traffic. They lost to Tokyo Mavericks. They lost to Fury 15-10. They lost to Brute 15-13. So those teams like all played at WCC and they're like back together in a pool. Like Mud is a really good bottom seed in your pool. Like they are a very talented team. And I don't know exactly what the makeup of their roster is going to be, but should be one to watch. And then I guess, but let's not make our picks yet. Let's keep it moving. We'll come back and make our picks at the end. Over on the mix side, we do have a couple of other international teams. Ellipsis coming over from Australia. We've also got Crazy, all caps, of course, from Japan. And Top Ultimate Club from Panama, as well as Voltaje from Colombia. So nice to see the international representation. A lot of these teams, Keith, have a significant number of American players. It's a little bit like WUCC, where it's like, oh, random star players from wherever in the United States are going to be competing with these international teams.
Which I get it. If you're coming from Australia and Japan and having to go to the US over and over and over again is probably a bit of a travel suck. But so I get it. But it does take a little bit off of the shine off of like, ooh, big international tournament. I'm not even entirely sure why we're still doing the whole ICC thing. Like there are opportunities for elite club teams to play each other international play. I wouldn't be mad if the field had Phoenix in it instead of this other team, or I'm sure you can think of plenty of mixed teams. Get Crocs in here. Do we need to have somebody come from Panama when we can have Crocs? I don't know. But I'm off. Especially Ellipsis though has a lot of American names on the team this year.
Well, they won the tournament way back. I can't even remember what year that was now. One of the early years of US Open, like 2014, 2015, something like that. That was fun. That was like a full Australian team at the time.
Yeah, and this team still has, like Alex Automatos and Rebecca Palmer and Rob Andrews. Like it's not just a US All-Star team, but they also have Penny Wu, so Anushka Beaudry, not American, but
not a couple nice pickups.
So yeah, I have a feeling they're going to be getting their share of touches,
I think I'm going with Pool C as my favorite pool here. Dragon Thrust, Ellipsis, Shame. Should be competitive and interesting. I don't know who's going to win that pool.
Yeah, that's an easy lock for best pool. I have no idea what to expect from that result. I don't know how good to expect this Ellipsis team to be. Could they be a threat to win the whole thing? Probably. I mean, look at the chaos we've seen in mixed anyway. Let alone when you throw a wild card into the bunch. Shame. There are few teams with as big a range of outcome of performance from what we see from Shame. They could come out and dominate, or they could vote it in and end up drinking adult beverages on the sidelines. Maybe they're not allowed to because YCC's not that far away.
I think the ship has sailed on that for Shame. I think they've been too good for too long. They can't have that. They can't be the party team anymore. Sorry.
Don't say that. That's like a challenge.
They probably go to bed at before the finals. They don't even go to the party.
I feel like you're asking to get iced right now.
On the men's side, Bravo, Truck Stop, Pony, Buzz Bullets, Rhino, Machine, Revolver. That's your top 7 seeds. You've also got randomly Omen. I'm not really sure how Omen is here as the 8 seed, but they are ahead of Sakai and Dig and Mutiny and Makawua. I'm guessing they had to fill a spot because I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah, they had a good season last year.
They did. So yeah, but I mean, we have basically all of the top level men's teams together at a tournament for the first time this year. And I'm very curious about this Buzz Bullets team. You know, they have not been at the standard that they set back in the 2010s in quite some time. But I think that always must watch TV.
Yeah, I think that I think that would be a really high bar for them. I would be surprised if they back up this seeding, especially when they have such a tough draw. I mean, is Dig like the best seed, the best team on the bottom line? I think so, probably. And they may have the best 2 and 3, right? I think Rhino, in our estimation, would clearly be the highest ranked of the teams on the 2 line too. So I think asking them to win this pool is a lot. They would have to really play at a high level, but I think that's going to make Pool D easily the pool to watch in this division. And you know, Buzz Bullets, they looked solid but not spectacular back at WCCs. So I think that they're going to be competitive, but yeah, Rhino and Dig is a lot to ask. What's
your favorite pool here?
Yeah, definitely Pool D though. Definitely stick with Pool D.
Okay. All right. Well, before we talk YCCs, let's go ahead and make our picks. We're going to go semis and finals and winner. And the way this season is going, I feel like I should just throw darts, but let's do our best. There are crossover games to do some seeding. So you might want to check in on how that's going to play out, Keith, because then you have some pre-quarters. If you win your seeding crossover and you won your pool, then you get a buy into quarters. So yeah, where are you going? I'll let you start. We'll stay in men's for now.
I really did forget about the seeding crossovers.
Yeah, you got to remember that.
So maybe I'm just going to kind of ignore how pools are going to line up. Which division are we starting with?
Men's.
All right. Men's picks. Let me go Pony Rhino in the final.
Okay. You're not going to pick your semis though, huh?
Oh, semis too? Oh, jeez, that's a lot of picks.
Come on, it's the US Open, Keith. I mean, there's so much intrigue here too. Like, and maybe as we make these picks, we can talk about like what are the things that you're most interested to watch in the men's division. So I'll set you up with that cue, and then you can give us your semis picks.
Well, obviously, we want to see where Pony's at. Are there actual things to be concerned about? That's I think kind of like checklist item 0. Like it's not necessarily this is the most important thing from this tournament, but it is the thing that you want to start with, in my opinion. Getting a sense of Machine and Dig also important for me. So you're going to get to see Dig, like we said, in Pool D. They're going to get tested a lot. They have some pretty intriguing additions to the roster. They also have some not minor losses to the roster too. But I think that the expectation is for them to compete for quarters, and maybe they're a dark horse semifinals team. I don't know. So keeping an eye on them and where they're at in the years is also important. And then Bravo, the mystery team. But if Bravo could come out and go 0-2 in pool play and end up the 11th seed of nationals and make the final, I don't know. So what are you going to learn from Bravo here besides the actual on tape? Like, how are they playing stuff? All right. So yeah, semis and finals. I'll take Pony, Truck, Rhino, Dig for my semifinalists.
I will also note this is the first tournament of this year where there's not going to be AUDL commitments causing teams to be missing players. Now, I mean, who knows? There's still going to be people at weddings and whatever, but I'm super curious to see what full strength Pony looks like. Do they go out here and look like the team that we expect them to be and start dominating right away, or does it look like they're going to need some time? I'm going to take Rhino, Pony, Truck, and Machine to make semis. And I'm going to take Truck and Pony to the final with Truck winning it all.
All right. I'm going to go, I said I'm going to go Pony, Rhino, Truck, Dig. And so I'll take Pony and I just don't have the wherewithal to sit here and figure out all the different permutations of who's going to be where.
No, I'm not. I didn't even try.
Yeah, so I'm just going to take Pony and Rhino in the final with Pony winning.
Yeah, I mean, so many teams to be interested in. Like, Truck picking up McCutcheon and Merriman. They lose a couple of strong players as well. Like, they lose a bunch of depth guys. I'm curious to see how that plays for them. But they still have a really strong core, and we know what they did last year. They were incredible, best offense in the country last year. So how do they stack up her early in this club season? Going to find out. Okay, to the mixed division. Let's see. This is really tough. I feel like we could see some wild results. I'm definitely going to take Exist, Dragon, BFG, and semis. Do I want to take Mixtape and go chalk? I really don't know that I do. I think I'm going to take Ellipsis as the fourth team. And then I'm going to have Exist and Dragon in the finals. And give me Dragon to win the whole thing.
All right, Exist and Dragon. So you had BFG as your fourth semifinalist. Exist, Ellipsis, Dragon, BFG. Is that right?
That's right. I'm fading Mixtape again.
Interesting. This is pretty hard because the Mixtape question is a tough one to answer. Like how are they going to look? Are we going to see AMP step up? Like Polar Bears, there was some preseason hype on Polar Bears, kind of died down a little bit. We already talked about Shame, and there's some other team here that we never really talk about on the show because they don't win a lot of games or anything. So, the less is said, the better. I think about that. Yeah, this is really hard. You can't say that this Ellipsis team isn't talented. So I also like Ellipsis to make it to semis. Feels like there's a lot of moving parts, though. And a tight quarters loss definitely feels like it could be in the offing. So I definitely like Exist. I like Dragon too. So I think I'm with you on all of that. But that last spot, I'm going to take a look at Shame. What does their roster really look like? So they have, looking at their roster for the tournament, they're picking up Maddie Russell this year, Shayna Brock, I think. They still have Jade McLaughlin, Marilyn Reich, Owen Westbrook, Aubrey Dietrich, Nick Snuska. Yeah, this is a compelling team, but can I pick them over Mixtape? This is really hard, Charlie.
It's hard.
I'm going to show some faith. I'm picking Mixtape. I'm taking Mixtape here. In the finals, I've got, I'm going to go same as you with Exist and Dragon, but I'm going to take Exist to get the win.
Okay. Exist, top ranked team right now in the Ulti World Power Rankings. Maybe the best women's matching players in the country. Definitely an argument for that. But we'll see about this Dragon team. Finally, we get to the women's division. Holy smokes. I'm going to take Brute, Fury, Traffic, and Molly in the semis. I've got Molly and Traffic in the finals. Whoa, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Okay. I'm taking Molly and Fury in the finals. And Molly won 14-13 over Fury back at PEC. I'll take him again. I think Molly wins it all. At home. The home field advantage, the home altitude advantage is a real thing, by the way, in Colorado. Something we haven't discussed, but important.
Yeah, so you have Molly. Okay, so you have Molly over Fury. What were your semis again?
I also had Brute and Traffic in semis.
Well, I'm definitely taking Molly and Fury. I'm gonna go with. I think this is probably chalky, but I'm gonna go Molly, Brute, Fury, Scandal. And I'm gonna go Molly Scandal in the final, and Molly gets the win. I think that's why my final offer here.
Okay. Wow. Scandal hype.
I think Scandal is good. I think that Scandal is good, and this is the kind of like, I think the tenor of this season has been that there's the best teams are not that far away from the really good teams, and there's a good sized tier of really good teams. So I'm kind of anticipating that to continue. I think we're gonna have a lot of storylines as we get further down the season. It's going to be results like this that help drive those.
This tournament really sets up kind of where the discussions will head for the rest of the year. Because it's easy to write off, early July tournaments as not especially meaningful, but like, can traffic back up what they did back at PEC? That's a very interesting question to me. They got the 2 seed here for a reason, because they went out there and they whooped on Molly Brown 14-9. Now, to be fair, they did lose to them later, 15-10, but wins over Nightlock, Flipside, Riot, they look dominant. But again, that was close to home. Let's see how they do up at altitude with what feels like almost the top end of nationals teams, Sans Phoenix.
I think you're putting a little too much stock in it. A not that important tournament.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Keith. US Open sets the stage for how we really feel about teams moving forward. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, a little YCC chatter, and then we'll send you off into the weekend. Lots of streaming coming as well. We'll talk about that. Welcome back to Deep Look. Before we talk YCC, it's time for our mailbag question of the week. Remember, you can always send in your mailbag questions to deeplook@oldsworld.com or mailbag@oldsworld.com, and hit us up on the Discord as well. Keith, what is this week's question?
This week's question comes from Where's My Bar Soap in the Discord. Which international team will place the highest across all divisions at the US Open?
Well, I've already revealed my pick here because I've got Ellipsis getting through to semis, and that's the only international team I've got going that far. Now, the thing is, how much is this an actual international team? I mean, they have a lot of players from all around. They're not really a truly Australian team. I mean, they have, I guess the core is Australian, but they have a lot of players that are from the US or from the UK, Canada. So, but they are very good. Anushka Beaudry, superb. You already mentioned Penny Wu as well. They have some great Australians in Alex Gann and Alex Latamatos, Lucien Noel, and then just a lot of other really strong pickups. Emily Kemp, Savannah Tucker. I think this is just like a great roster. Whether they mesh, I have no idea. But I think that they have the best sort of on paper chance to make a push to semis or beyond.
I'm with you on that. As my picks also alluded to, they have some players who I think can be volatile. Anush and Penny Wu have big throws, and watching them chuck it to Rob Andrews is going to be a lot of fun. But I don't necessarily know how it's all going to come together. But the talent's kind of undeniable. After that, like if I had to take them off the table. This Swampy Bark team looks pretty good at WCC. They beat Brute Squad, I'm pretty sure. So I guess I'd probably say them after that. And Buzz Bullets would also be in the mix.
You've named the 2 other teams I would name, so we're on the same page. But I won't count Mud out. We'll see how they shape up. All right, let's talk YCC. We've got U20s in all 3 divisions, U17s for boys and girls. We're not going to talk about U17s here. Sorry, it's just a little too much throwing darts. We don't know those players at all. But we've grown to know some of these U20 teams. And your top seeds in the boys division, U20 boys, Utah Swarm, Oakland, Boston, Triangle, and then Atlanta and Oregon. In the girls division, Oregon, Utah, Maine, Atlanta, Seattle. Fang is Philadelphia. So your top 6 seeds. And in the mixed division, it's Seattle, Oregon, DC, Dallas, Philly, and Utah. So lots of Utah representation there, Keith. Lots of Seattle representation. What should we expect this year at YCCs?
A lot of Utah and Seattle, and a lot of Oregon, I'm pretty sure, across divisions, as we've seen as of late. The rise of Oregon. I don't think that is going to abate here. I think that they're going to be the favorites to win the girls division, and they're the 2 seeded mixed, and they're all the way at the 6 seeded in the boys division. But we've also seen the maybe somewhat quietly boys ultimate on the rise in Oregon as well. So I think they're going to be in the mix. For me, I think that the girls division is the most interesting to me. I do think that Oregon's going to be decent sized favorites, but there are a lot of talented players from Utah on this Utah team. Players who we saw do really well in either previous YCCs or in other areas or at high school national invite. They're going to have a small roster, but they're going to be tough, and they still have Abby Davis. Lily Terpstra and Abby Davis are going to be 2 of the best players at this tournament, and their depth goes beyond that. I mean, they're not going to be a 2-player show by any means. I think that I also have high expectations for Warhawks. They have Bella Russell and Tatum Kabrilovich on that team. Those are 2 pretty big names in the triangle scene. Seven Hills will obviously be good. They've got both the Hakimis, they've got both the Gelfins. So if you follow Seattle Girls Ultimate, I mean, this is a really talented squad. So I think battling into semifinals is going to be super interesting in the girls division. That's probably the one I'm the most excited about. And that's not even accounting for the Posey on Riptide or some of the strong players we saw on that Philly team at high school national invite as well. They're here with Fang. I don't think you want to count out Devil either. So there's a lot of good stuff going on in the girls division for me.
And that's Annie Posey, not Emily. In case you were confused.
The younger Posey,
who is getting a lot of hype. So we'll see if she delivers at YCC. On the mixed side, it's going to be interesting there as well. You see the Seattle top seeded team, maybe not as talented as it's been in years past, but you still got Cedar Hines out there who's coming off of a fantastic performance at HSNI. The Oregon team, a bunch of the Melners on this roster. I don't know if they should be the 2 seed. I think the swing vote, they're always a good mixed side at this tournament. You look at Abby Freund, going to be a big playmaker, Margot Nissen as well. So lots to watch there.
Tamir Hill Marshall. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
He put on a show at high school national invite.
So some big names there on the boys division. Utah looks very strong. Sam Pugh and Mitchell Burt both had big performances at HSNI. They'll be leaders for that team for sure. And then, I'm curious, like, what's this Triforce team look like this year? How good is Buddha going to be? I think, these are always good teams. They don't necessarily have quite the same hype as in some past years, but I want to take a look at the pipeline from some of these top areas and see, like, hey, maybe one of those teams can come out and win the whole thing, and puts us on alert for, like, hey, we got to have big upcoming college seasons for the area schools. Not that UNC needs any more help.
No. Looking at mixed, I think Seven Hills is going to be a sizable favorite. But I feel like we always see both swing. You see swing vote do well. I think you tend to see the Minnesota teams do well. So you also have Madison in the field this year. So I think they'll pick up some of that as well. I don't know exactly though what to expect. There's always a little bit of chaos. Just classic mixed. And in boys, last year we were really impressed with that Utah team. I think they're going to be the favorites again. But Oakland was maybe the talk of the tournament. Yeah, I think we kind of expected that Utah team. It was a bit of a breakout performance for like Nate DeMorgan, but they this year's team has Braden Bybee and Sam Pugh, like Mitchell Burt. You know these names if you've followed along with High School National Invite or YCC recently. Oakland, though, there's some of the names from last year's team that felt a little bit out of nowhere are back. I mean, they still have Raekwon Atkins. They still have Dylan Nice. I mean, these guys were torching people last year. I don't know how the depth will fill out, but they're an intriguing team. And you mentioned Buda being a group that you want to watch. I kind of want to keep an eye on the Colorado teams. Is how much benefit will it be for it to be in their backyard, and not even just from a thin air, but just being able to get people out, being able to be supported by your community, having coaches who are a little maybe more accessible. Very curious how that's going to impact the Colorado teams, because I would not be surprised to see them outperform their seeds either.
Well, in the boys division, what are they? The 18 seed Cutthroat?
Yeah.
I'm definitely curious, because there's been a little bit of hype on the high school level about a couple of the Colorado programs. And if they show up big here, we could start to see, okay, Colorado putting itself on the map. But they got a lot of work to do. They got to play Philly and Buda. No easy task. So always a fun tournament. Got to make sure you tune in for all of the late round bracket games that'll be streamed. We are going to be streaming tons of games this year from the US Open. We're going to have most rounds. We will have 2 showcase streams for standard subscribers, as well as a 3rd bonus stream for all access subscribers. And we'll be doing some of the production this year for ESPN Plus for the semifinals of the club division. And then we'll take over streaming primarily YCC on Sunday and Monday. We will have the 3rd place games from the club US Open as well on Sunday morning. But then all the big bracket games from the YCCs going on the latter 2 days. So really looking forward to an awesome weekend in Colorado. Come say hi if you're visiting. Keith and I will both be there. And we'll probably do a little live deep look at some point as we break down what we've been seeing. And so look forward to having you tune in for that live in the Discord if you're a subscriber.
Should be fun. Yeah, definitely stop by and say hi. And if you've got chirps for us, your team busting up my picks somewhere, we're happy to take them.
All right. You can check out the full streaming schedule. Hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, it will be up. But if not, it'll be up within the next 24 hours. And we'll be posting, of course, links on social media and everything. So enjoy the US Open. We will see you in Denver, everybody.